Hello, my name is Kate Schaefer of Kate Schaefer Fine Art, and I'm here today to show you another pouring video. It's the Liquitex pouring medium, and we're going to start with just a blank canvas again today. This is the Da Vinci 1/8 inch raised side. I think you can see it's an 1/8 of an inch height, and we're going to do I have some Liquitex unbleached titanium, I have golden yellow ochre, and I have Liquitex burnt umber. And we're just going to kind of randomly put these on the board. And what we're going for is a kind of a sand colored background. And we're going to do a pouring that will remind us of the ocean. Now, you don't want a lot of the burnt umber. It's a very dark, intense color. You're just putting a little bit of it in there. And the reason that I'm all about random is because nature doesn't do things perfectly symmetrically or perfectly evenly. You'll see things, colors are spread out, and there's lots of different colors in one thing. So I'm just going to brush it on in kind of staggered strokes, bringing the colors together. Getting into the corners. Now you can tape off the sides if you're afraid that you'll get overly excited and brush up onto the sides, and I certainly understand that. I am not a super neat painter. If you could see my studio, you would know that was true. I'm not too worried about it right now because this color is pretty much the color of the wood, so I'm not super worried about that. But right now you just kind of want to go all around and work at bringing those colors together. A lot of this you won't actually see when you're done because we're going to do this in 2 stages. This is a really fun technique. This shows you how to use inclusions and put stuff, 3-dimensional objects into your pouring medium. And since the pouring medium dries absolutely clear, you don't have to worry about things being obscured too much unless you paint over them. So, all right. So that looks pretty good. Nice sandy color. All right, and I'm just going to stick this in some water off camera. Now, you can wait for this to dry if you wish, but you don't have to, because the pouring medium is not going to lift it up or discolor it in any way. And all we're doing is a very thin layer, a really, really thin layer, because we're going to be letting the first layer dry and putting the second layer on top of that. And you only have an 1/8 of an inch lip. So you don't want a ton of pouring medium. You need to watch those bubbles. It's easy to get bubbles in it. my palette knife and get it to the edges here. And if I had been smart, I would have poured it around the edges closer in the first place, but you know, life happens. And it moves. Now, because your paint is wet underneath, you'll need to be careful when you're spreading it around that you don't accidentally pull up the paint underneath. If you let it dry, that wouldn't be an issue. In the interest of time, I'm not going to let it dry. Some of those bubbles. This is a good time to work out the bubbles. And you can see this is quite a thin layer. Just barely covers the canvas. And you're gently moving things around to try to avoid the bubbles, putting more bubbles in. If it dries, there's nothing you can do about the air bubbles. So if you want them out, you have to do it before you start messing with things. All right, also going to put this into the water. Got a little bit here on the side. All right, now the inclusions. What I have here is just super fine sand. You can get it at your local hobby store. You can buy, they put it in terrariums and those kind of things. So I find mine at Michael's in the flower section. And as you can see, I'm just kind of randomly sprinkling it on here. Now, if you have a different color sand, use a different color paint, because you will see it under there. All right. So, and again, you don't need a super thick layer. You could put a little more on here if you wanted to. I like it the way it is. I like the paint to show through a little bit, like the floor of the ocean would if you were looking down. Makes it a little more dimensional. Now, for fun and for texture, I like to add a little bit of this stuff, and it's called poultry grit. You have to go to a feed store, an Agway, someplace like that to get poultry grit. Yeah, it's fun to use. It's fun to use for texture and particularly for this. So I'm not going to cover the whole thing in poultry grit. I'm just going to sprinkle it on one corner. And again, you don't want a ton of it because it won't stick. So you can push it down in a little bit. Be careful, because if you have any on your fingers, it'll stick to your fingers instead. So, all right. So this is what it looks like at this stage. You can see right over here, maybe, it didn't get quite all the way up to the edge. So I'm going to fix that right now before it gets dry. All right. So I'm going to set this to the side and bring out the one that's dry. And this is what it looks like dry. Now whatever is on here now is stuck very firmly. It is raised a little bit. There's only one or two that are raised above the rim, but as long as they're stuck firmly, you don't have to worry about it. All right, so now we're going to do our next layer of pouring medium, and that just goes right on over the top. This will give you an effect of depth because the first layer is dry already. There's no mixing with the second layer, but it will absolutely bond, no problem. And you can see why that first layer has to be so thin, because otherwise you're going to have overflowing to be able to cover up most of what you have now. So now this looks totally fine if you don't want to use the poultry grit, if you don't like that look. It works, you know, if you wanted to add little tiny shells, or something like that. All right, now again, I'm gonna move this to the corners. And you wanna make sure, before you get started, that your table, your surface, is absolutely level. If it is not, the pouring medium will move as the table leans. All right, so now I have two tools. One is the catalyst tool, and it looks like that. These are pricey. They're very nice. It's a little flexible, but it's not super flexible. But I found a nice substitute. It's not as stiff, but it's a basting brush. You can buy it at the dollar store. And I'll show you how both of them work when we get going here. All right, now I have all, these are all FW acrylic inks. Do not use alcohol inks. Alcohol does not mix well. You will have cracking and crazing in your pouring medium if you use alcohol inks exclusively. You can use alcohol inks, but we'll get into that in another video because it has to be controlled. Otherwise, you have a lot of crazing. All right, so I have white, I have brownie blue, I have marine blue, and I have processed cyan. And these are all Daler-Rowney acrylic inks. The opaque inks, you're going to want to shake. I don't know if you can see in the video, but they definitely settle and separate. The white goes to the bottom. So if you want the true color pigment, you'll have to shake it. And I'm going to be very careful with this because this is opaque. And I don't want too much opaque. I like being able to see through the ink to the bottom of the water, down to the beach. This is the marine blue. And this is the Rowney blue. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was Rowney blue. This is the marine blue. So this has a little bit of green to it. Now, it looks like I'm not using very much. And that's true. And the reason is because these inks are very, very pigmented. They have a lot of color in them, and they go a little, goes a long way. So I'm going to take the catalyst tool first, and I'm going to begin to manipulate the color to give that impression of the water kind of coming up against the rocks. And once you get it on your tool, it's easy to put it back in someplace else and move it around. Now, this is when you need to be careful that you don't try to go too fast, because this is when you will get air bubbles in, and that is not a good thing. Now, you can move it all the way down. If there is no pigment, it will be clear, and you will be able to see all the way through. If it is not clear, if there's pigment there, if it is the transparent colors, which are the Rowney blue and the marine blue, then you'll be able to see a little bit through, just like if you were looking through the water. Right. So now I'm going to show you how the silicone pastry brush, or basting brush, works. And because there's more, I am just barely touching the surface with this. Because there are more tines on the brush, you're going to get a finer striation, and I don't want to overwork this. Okay, so that's it. And as long as you like the way it looks, you can just let it dry. If you like these videos and you're watching it on YouTube, please make sure you like and subscribe down at the bottom. If you're watching it on my website, please comment. You can also do that on YouTube. I'll be posting a lot more of these if I get thumbs up from everybody, and I know that you are interested in what I have to show you. All right, you take care, and I'll be back with a picture of this as soon as it's dry.